Awesome. We're live. Great to have you here today. We're here to talk about product strategies for traditional companies. And I want just take a minute to talk about you. You are a seasoned product leader, currently living in South Africa, right? So tell us a bit about you, your background.
Thank you for having me. I'm Annett. I work in product for 20 years, so it's been a long while. 7 years ago, I've decided to be more like a product consultant. Before I was really working as a senior product manager, becoming a product leader. But then I've decided I really want to be more on the product consultant part. I like very short projects, but it's always, when clients hired me, it was always, like a huge thing. There was always a lot of fires I had to put out. 3 or 4 years ago, I've decided to go more in product transformation, because what I've seen is that a lot of companies, they're trying to deliver great products, but actually the processes before, they were not the right ones. So that is also my passion, I have to say, like really optimizing processes. It's very German. I'm also German. We really like to efficiency. And so talking to other product leaders who are German, they have the same. I was leading 2 very big projects on the transformation side. One was really with like over 30 countries. So it was really exciting to do that. And last year and the year before, I've decided to become more like a product leadership coach. So I'm a certified leadership coach, but I really want to work with product leaders together, because I've seen like how much, like including me, how much they struggled, how much support they actually need. Because when you are a product leader, and especially working in traditional companies, this is the topic we're going to talk about, you're pretty much alone there. So you really need all the support needed. Currently, I created a program for product leaders, so for new product leaders or senior product managers who want to become product leaders, because that's a big step. And, because you go into people management, it's a totally different thing than managing products rather than managing people. And so I've created a program for that.
Awesome. That's really interesting. I think you're touching a really pain point for many product leaders that are alone and not necessarily have the right peers next to them to be able to confront their ideas and problems and find meaningful solutions. And while we were preparing this interview, and we touched on several crucial elements. We were talking about the fact that in SaaS, in product today, and in the digital world, and especially in recurring revenue models, we assume our clients will keep paying for. Now the prerequisite is still that they keep getting values as they pay, right? So, and maybe even more value in time, so they can pay more and expand within the company's offering. And we were having this conversation about the fact that as product managers, we read the books. We heard the talks, we aced the courses, and that's awesome. Yet the type of inspiring map that was handed to us doesn't always match the wild terrain we're facing in companies, and the clock's ticking, the work is piling up. So we have to figure it out. And considering this whole context, we decided to talk about a pragmatic way of making the shift to becoming more customer focused, more product driven with you. We'll try to dive into the methods and mindsets that can change a traditional company, right, and help to adopt and align product teams with customer expectations. This is the topic today, right?
Yes. And I really like that you were saying, well, there are traditional companies and they have a model, right? They have people who are still buying from them. But I mean, the user behavior, I don't know if you've seen that in the last 2-3 years, it's changing dramatically and drastically. So there has to be a change there as well, because I think before they were still okay, right? They were still like, hey, we still have people who buy our product. We are sales-led. That's totally fine. I'm also not saying that sales-led is really bad. It's just like, it shouldn't be the only lead in your company. So I really like that you were saying they still have people who buy from them, but probably not in the future. So they have to make their company future-proof. And the only way to do this is to be more user-centric.
So really interesting. And so maybe we can start by just kind of ironing out the main challenges maybe you've seen traditional companies facing while transitioning to this type of product and more customer-centric approach, because you've dealt with that already.
Yeah. So when I go to new companies as a consultant, but also as a product advisor, and talk to, like, let's say, the C-level about their problems they're facing, and what they say is actually like, well, we hired someone who does user research. We have now like a product analyst in the team. And they think they're already on the way to be user-centric, but they don't really understand that user-centricity is not something the product team just does. And I think that's the problem. So I think it's a cultural approach, because when you work in a startup or a scale-up, you don't have a company which is on the market for 50, 60 years. They're just on the market for 10 years or less. So like changing a culture is so much easier for them than like a company where some people work for 10, 20 years there. So I think it's really starting with the cultural and also the understanding that they even have a problem, and just hiring people is not going to solve that problem. Also, I'm not a huge fan of like hiring like agencies or companies for HR business transformation, because to be honest, why does a HR team need to work in Scrum? Why do they have to write Jira tickets? So this is also not the answer. Being user-centric is much more holistic, and it's about everyone in the company, including the CEO, but not only the CEO, like really everyone. And how can we make this shift to be more user-centric? And I think the first problem is the understanding, and then secondly, also the holistic part of that problem, that all the problems lead to not being user-centric. The second thing I think is that they have this legacy systems, legacy processes. There is always this thing, like when you talk to someone, they say, we always did it like this, why? And it always worked, and why should we change this now? And this is also an approach when you go to people and tell them that they should do something different, they always think they do something wrong, which is not the case. They just need to there are new times, and they have to adapt to this. And working with these expectations and also this resistance to change is something also, but what I think is a big problem in more traditional companies. So perhaps I can summarize it. As a summary for me is really the culture change and really the resistance also to change, then legacy systems, and also expectation management. What is this user-centricity even meaning, and how does it change me and my team?
Yeah, I love it. And I think the main point you made here is first recognize the problem, right? As soon as you did recognize that there is a problem, then everything else will be easier, just because then if there is a problem, it's a company problem, not only a team problem, not only a product problem, it's a business problem. Then it's also easier to say, then it's a business responsibility. It's not only the product team responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility. And then it's also easier to make the change because you recognize the change is needed, right? The recipes that brought you where you are in today won't bring you to the next step. So it's about that. I love it. Really great point. To move forward on this topic, do you have any advice on how you can, make sure that this cultural changes is owned by everyone within the company? Is there any specific way of making that, come true in your experience?
Yeah, usually you do this when you have like initiatives for that. And this needs to be really like a collaborative initiatives. So that means you really have to, okay, what I see in a lot of traditional companies really trying to deliver products there, and what they usually have, they come with you with this huge problem or like a lot of problems. Let's call it like this. And they really have problems with prioritizing things. They also don't understand that you start with the easiest problem to solve and not the biggest problem. So what I'm always helping them to figure out, what is the easy, first of all, low-hanging fruits, right? What is something what we could do which is easy to solve? I wouldn't really go into like, to go back to this, sorry, is find a product or like an innovation initiative which is really linked to something about user centricity. So when we solve this one problem, this one small problem of like really like a small amount of our customers in a small, really small step in the user journey, how is this helping us? And this innovation initiative, which is really about one certain problem and a very small problem you want to solve, and just one step in a problem, not the complete problem, because then you have to wait forever for this to be solved. The innovation initiative has to be with all the people you need for that. So I usually, it's one of the product leaders who's like the change agent for that. So I think that's really important, because I think they have all the capabilities as a role to really guide and lead in this initiative. And then you have to really get all people on board you need. And it cannot be just product, it should be marketing, HR, there should be really everyone involved. So that means when you have look at the cake and the problem, it's the problem, you have to cut it more like this so that really everyone is kind of involved. And if you don't have certain capabilities there, like if you don't have a product analyst or you don't have someone who knows how to do an experiment, you have to hire them, even if it's just a freelancer. So you have to be 100% sure, what do I need in order to be successful? It has to be a very small problem, but it needs to be cut in a direction so that it's a cross-functional problem to solve. And then also something which is easy to solve, which is a lot. So the organization of this is going to take a while. But I've seen people or companies succeeding with that. And also the reward of succeeding is really amazing to see.
So what I'm hearing here is like, we need to understand that there is not only one big problem that we need to, break down and overcome, but we need to break it down, right? We need to slice the elephant. And once we have sliced it, we go for the low-hanging fruits. I don't know how I combine those two pictures, but that's fine. You have to make sure then that you have the resources to get to this low-hanging fruit and to this slice of the problem. And I assume that will be also easier to get buy-in, right, from this smaller slice of problem than getting buy-in for a huge problem like fixed churn.
I also seen a lot, like, especially because before I worked in Berlin, and we have a lot of like this innovation lab. Daimler has innovation labs. Other companies, like really big old German companies, they have these innovation labs. To some extent, it's very successful because you take out the best people from the old company, and then you're bringing in new people, and you can really like deliver great stuff and really innovative stuff with that. The only problem is that if you want to have a product and you want to go live with this, it can take months. Perhaps your whole delivery process, you're perhaps done in like 2 or 3 weeks, but then it takes another 3 to 4 weeks before you can go live with something, because the whole process, there are still processes, these legacy systems, which are still holding you back even when you are in an innovation lab. There's still, people to have to sign off, like a lot of people just have to sign off. So I would be always conscious with that and how to really integrate it in a way that it's not stopping the process of innovation.
That's interesting. So let's talk a bit more about that. How can an organization, balance those needs for innovation with this established market presence? Do you have any tips on how to make that happen?
This is really like a phased approach. You cannot just say like, because there are the legacy system and you can't just, switch them off from one night to the other. And it's again like, so you shouldn't really create a shadow kind of system. So it doesn't make any sense to make a complete new one, but to check like like how can we keep on still working on the legacy system, but perhaps in regard of seeing into the future, like how can we build a better one, but how do we can still innovate at the same time. And this is a super balanced approach, and it's really, really hard to get there. So it's really, again, it's an initiative. You have to work with a lot of stakeholders. So this is also a thing. When you have these legacy systems, they're usually not just owned by one team. They're usually owned by the whole company in some way. So you have to do a lot of stakeholder management. So this can't be also something that just one person does. When you want to say, okay, let's do innovation, like an innovation initiative, we have this one project, we work all on that. So it can't be one person who's just responsible for that. The good thing when this initiative is already created in a very collaborative way, you have also the people from the legacy system in there. So it's easier than with the stakeholder management in there when you have all people on the table already. And so you have to find a really good balance of like innovations, working on something so that you in the back end, you know, the legacy system is something we can also shut off in the future. It takes time. Also not the low-hanging fruit. It needs to be really a strategic initiative. So like the whole thing needs to have like a really big vision for like where do we want to be in 5 years, and then breaking it down. This innovation initiative is just the first step how to get there. How do you start with that? Start with one problem and then go to bigger ones. But firstly, you have to start with really that everyone understands why is this important. You have to really start with workshops with everyone involved. So leadership workshops, because change, if like the leadership is not behind that, if they don't understand why we need to change in order to stay in the market, then this is going to be a problem. So really start with the big vision. Why do we need to do this? And then think, what's the first step to get there?
Align that problem with the leadership vision to get the buy-in from the leadership, and then maybe slice the problem so we get buy-in from to the depth of it. Whoever should be involved. So I love that.
I mean, cultural change is the hardest. It has to also start from the top. You cannot just ask people or teams to start with cultural change. You really have to, as a leader, to demonstrate this change. Because this is what I see in a lot of companies. There's a lot of finger pointing to the teams. They don't really have the culture we want to have. They're not really innovative. But if their leadership is not innovative and it's not user-centric, then it's really hard to ask the teams for that. So for this, I was saying you need to start with leadership workshops, leadership coaching, like with all of that. And then I really like the concept of behavioral metrics. So like what kind of behavior we want to adopt as a company in order to be more innovative, more user-centric. And for me, this is the first, it's like something more haptical because culture is such a soft thing, right? So when are we done with that? I mean, innovation, change, transformation, this is always happen, right? We're not going to be done with that. But I recently had a discussion exactly about that. Like we want to change our culture, but I don't know, how do we want to do that? So you have behavioral matrices where you say like where we want to stand, but it shouldn't be, it should be kind of action focused. So just when you see values and you just have like a user centricity, what does it mean for us? What does user centricity really mean? And we breaking it down. That's really important, because if not, you just have a really nice manifesto, but no one really knows what to do with that.
I love how you break it down with the behavioral matrix, and you get something more grounded into people minds and how these minds and way of doing things need to evolve in order to fix the problem. So it's difficult. It's the most difficult because it's a people work, right? And that's always harder to change people and people behaviors. But that requires for sure to get to get the problem statement right, the buy-in and the understanding, the identification of the problem right. We had a conversation also about that with Marion, who is a product manager agent, a couple of weeks ago, about the first person who embodied the culture of the company as a leader, and that's going to waterfall throughout the team if it's coming from there. Otherwise, it's harder to manifest it inside an organization. So I love that, and so we kind of have almost ironed out even the first step to get this ball rolling into the organization, get the coaching for leaders, get leaders to understand, identify that the problem is here and that these changes need to happen, and that they are also the sources of these changes. That's one of the first steps. Do you have any other advice on how we could implement this?
Let's start with culture and behavioral matrix, because this is usually the thing people ask me the most about, this kind of KPIs. I think for especially product people, this is an easier thing to do or to adapt or to implement. The cultural thing is something where I'm always getting like a lot of feedback and questions. So let's say we want to have a behavioral matrix, like what kind of values do we want to adopt? Which behavior is okay and which behavior is not okay. So let's say we have an initiative for this. So who needs to be in this initiative? There should be every leader from every department in there. And then also defining what are the values we want to have, and as I was saying before, what are the behaviors we want to have and which we don't want to have. And then you can start, for example, give this to HR. So when they start to write their job profiles, that they start to write them with this behavioral matrix in mind. Then also internal job profiles need to be rewritten. Internal profiles need to be rewritten and to be adapted to this new behavioral matrix. That's always, for me, the best start, to be more user-centric as an initiative. This is, I think, what we were talking before. It was really about bringing everyone into that. Every leader needs to be in that. And then also, firstly, starting with what is user-centricity actually mean for us? How can we actually adapt it? But also still keeping our identity as a company. Because this is also what I'm hearing a lot. Like, companies say we are like on the market for like 50 years. Why should we change? We have our identity. We don't want to give this really up. We are sales led and it's really worked really well. But I think that's also in the discussion you have to have. How is user centricity actually looking like for our company? Because it can look differently for different companies. Change is always happening, if you want or not. The market is changing all the time. So you also need to change. That's not something, it's not an option to change.
Absolutely. Yeah. What are the typical problems we're seeing when trying to foster such change?
I think a lot of them I already mentioned before, but let's just summarize. So it's often that leadership doesn't sees that they have to change too, like the finger pointing to teams, and we have to work differently without understanding. If you don't provide a user-centric strategy for the teams to really work on, that's not going to happen either. So this is one of the biggest problems and challenges I see. It always change has to start with leadership, and if this is not supported, then this is a problem. What we were saying before is the legacy systems, and any product leader who worked with legacy system can tell you this is really so annoying. You have these great ideas, you have the team, everyone is super excited, and then someone comes and say, yep, by the way, it's not working because you forgot we have this legacy system, or you have to sign something up with someone and you have to work. Like, in the end, you just have workarounds, and you have to be careful with that. If you're working in a company and you're just creating workarounds over workarounds, is this really how you want to work in the future? So I think the legacy system part is something everyone who ever worked in a traditional company can agree with me. This really sucks. Sorry, if not, you need to put it out. Then the other thing is also resistant to change. So there are so many people who work, like I worked in companies, there were people working there for 10, 15 years. Going to them and saying we're doing things differently is really hard. There's some people who understand there is a problem, but I would say like 1/3 of people are really saying, I don't understand it, I don't want to do it, I'm the expert, how come you come to me and tell me what to do and how to do this? So this resistance to change and expectation management is a huge thing, what I think is a problem with traditional companies. And also what we also were saying before, understanding that this is the problem. If there are keep on being stakeholder and sales-led or just sales-led and stakeholder-led, then this is going to be a problem for the company, and they're not going to be probably here in the future, because that's not how companies or products and services should be created and developed.
Love it. So I think it really boils down to nailing the problem statement, aligning everyone on the problem statement, and show everyone how they personally, or they or their team, will be or is already affected by the problem today and will be affected by the problem tomorrow. I think this is the main stone of the house we want to build here.
That's a great summary. Yeah, exactly. I would also summarize it like this.
Great, love it. Thank you, Annett. It was really rich, really interesting to get your view on this transition. I think that many companies are in this situation today. They have this struggle, and just to get back to the roots of it and understand what is a good entry point, what we need really to nail to get started with the right approach, and get this cascada, this waterfall going on, and in a positive way. Love it. Thank you so much, Annett. It was really helpful.